Welcome to Positive Filter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career, with a little self-help along the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place. I hope you enjoy the show. I hope you enjoy the show.
How you doing? You okay?
Good. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Filter. I'm joined by a special guest because everyone's a special guest because they take their time to join me on the show. I'm joined by Miss Amy-Louise Goldberg. Now, we met randomly on LinkedIn, which I think is the way I meet a lot of people now in regards to the professional development world and all these things. And she introduced herself to me in the LinkedIn. We got on a phone call, and I realized that she is a great communicator and connector of people, and she just knows her stuff in regards to how to present yourself. So I was like, wow, I need to have her on the podcast because these are some great lessons that I think she can share with others. So before we get started, Amy, Amy-Louise, what would you prefer for this episode?
Thanks for asking, Phil. Amy-Louise would be great.
Yeah, Amy-Louise, please introduce yourself and just tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me first, Phil. I'm excited to be here. And I have kind of I like to joke, a checkered past, sort of a convoluted, twisted turn. But there is a theme, and that is that a lot of the things that I've done have a sort of a strategic problem solving through communications bent to them. I actually graduated from college with a degree in French language and literature. After having lived abroad for a year, I took all my classes in French as a junior. And I was thinking I would actually go on to be an interpreter. I was successful at interviewing at the big interpreting school in Geneva. I was really hoping to become an interpreter because I had been studying Spanish also since I was 6. And ultimately, I decided, even though they said, if you spend a few more years here, you could probably be good enough, just decided I don't really want to be in a booth, an interpreting booth, right? Because back in those days, they allowed smoking and, I just couldn't see myself doing that. I'm too social. And then I thought about, well, maybe I'll get a PhD in French. I actually applied to a couple of PhD programs and was offered positions. And the professor that I had in my last semester had written a book, and I believe it sold 75 copies. And I decided, you know what? I don't really think I want to do that either. It's probably a little bit too esoteric. So I started actually in door-to-door sales out of college. I sold beavers door-to-door in Tucson. Yeah, it was great. Talk about consultative sales, right? Door to door, 7 a.m. And that was fun. And I started to get interested in why we were doing certain promotions and certain marketing tricks and turns, and decided maybe I'll go to business school and really learn more about that. So I was fortunately admitted to Kellogg with a scholarship, completed a couple of years there in marketing and management, and was successful in getting my dream job, which was in brand management after I graduated for a company that's now part of Unilever. And I really enjoyed the marketing part of it, got to work on Suave brands, but I really didn't like the number crunchy part. It was not a good fit for me. So I decided to move into kind of doing my own marketing research and advertising research. Did that for a little while, worked for some independent clients, and then actually worked for a couple of advertising research suppliers. And this is when things were really transitioning from primarily qualitative to more quantitative. And so I moderated some focus groups and also did some survey research. I got to work with some great clients like IBM, Coke, Kraft General Foods was big back in the day, and so on. So that was fun. And then I hit one of those milestone birthdays. And I thought, what do I really want to do? The company had moved out of state and they were paying people to commute there. And I was like, I don't really know if I want to do that. So I answered an ad for an executive search consultant position and started a few weeks later as the manager of the human resources desk. And over the next 15 plus years, was put in charge of the human resources practice, and eventually became senior executive in the organization. And over that time, placed over 200 individuals in a wide variety of major companies. So worked with thousands of people, primarily human resources professionals. And after 9/11, I really wanted to reach out to people that obviously were having a hard time in a lot of different ways, not only just career-wise, but professionally. And so I started my own coaching practice, which I've had since that time. So I've seen and coached hundreds of individuals of all different types since that time, in parallel with my day jobs. And I was particularly impressed with some of the younger people. They really seemed to be very motivated and excited, and decided, I really would like to transition to a new challenge. I worked in a few career centers in the New York area, including Barnard and NYU for a few years, and really had a fantastic time doing that, helping thousands of students, and in particular, a lot of international students. I know you are familiar with the benefits and joys of doing that. And then landed here at Mander Consulting. I started as a part-time coach, as all of our coaches do, while I was working at another career center. And within 5 months, the CEO asked me, hey, can you coordinate our 5 coaches that we have on our national team? Because they had just joined just come to the US from the UK a few months before. And about a year later, I wrote a job description to lead the coaching practice in the US and to head up our talent management, including primarily our talent acquisition function. And so I've been in that role now almost 6 years, and I lead a team of about 20 coaches around the country. I head up all of the hiring. I personally had the pleasure of coaching over 250 of the wonderful Chinese international students that we work with. And I also oversee the client care function, as well as the U.S. marketing, and a program manager who reports to me. She oversees about 2,500 sessions a year. So there's a lot going on there. I get to partner as well with heads of sales and marketing globally, as well as work closely with the UK head of coaching as well, and report into the CEO as well as the managing director in the UK. So juggling a lot of balls, but we're really focused on driving global sales and getting the word out. And the company's mission is to change people's lives. So that's what drives me every day.
That was quite an introduction. I felt like I went on a career journey. And I was like, wow, you did have a checkered path. I was like, dang, HR, market research, all over the place. I mean, in a good way. I love that. So one of the things I'm thinking about is, and particularly into this subject, is that a lot of this, in relation to all these different steps that you've taken in your career, you've had to reintroduce yourself to people. You've had to get connected to people. You've had to learn new things from people. Like maybe I'm gonna pivot to this. So can you speak to the importance of, as you transition from this market to human resources to coaching, what was the importance of reaching out to people and building a network as you transition to these different industries, where I think some of them, they do intersect, but they might be different. So what was the importance of that?
Right. So just to clarify, when you say the importance, do you mean, well, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. What do you mean by what was the importance?
I don't know. I mean, or maybe importance, or did you even feel like you needed to do that? Or do you purposely do that when you were transitioning from one industry to the next? Did you purposely say, I need to know a little bit more about this before I get into it? Let me reach out to people.
Okay, got it. Yeah, thanks. So I am kind of a researcher by nature. I just redid my Strengths Finder, and Input and Learner are 2 of my top 3. So I do like to gather information. And you're making a great point. I mean, you could certainly gather information from written sources, right? We can all go online. There's books, there's magazines, all that. But there's no substitute for people. There's no substitute for talking to people in that industry that you're looking to get into. So actually, I did do 2, if you want to call it, hidden job market / informational interviewing campaigns when I transitioned from marketing into more of the marketing research or advertising research space. And then also when I transitioned into the college career coaching space. And I think what you're alluding to is very true, but that it is critical to build those networks. In the first campaign, I think I reached out to 40 people that I actually spoke to, and the second one, 60 people. So it took a lot of time and a lot of planning, but it's so worth it for a lot of different reasons. Certainly, the people you talk to might know other people who could lead you into the field and have, have job opportunities. But also, and this is really what I coach my private clients and my students as well, is to think of those interactions not even so much with a goal at the end, but to look at them as a learning opportunity. You just never know what you're going to learn in talking to someone. And conversely, which is something that students often don't recognize, the person you're talking to doesn't realize what they might learn from you as well. So it's very much an educational process if you can focus on that and not be fixated on, is this person going to get you a job? And that's actually how I made the transition, for example, into the career coaching space. I was interviewing with the senior associate director with one of the career centers here. I think I could say it was at Barnard. And I talked to him for about an hour, and I said, hey, do you ever use interns here? And he said, yeah, just a minute. And he went back and he found the director. The director came out. We talked for a while. And I think the next week I started as an intern. And then a couple of months later, they hired me for an ongoing position because someone had just left the organization. So those relationships are definitely important. Yes.
I love it. And I mean, this is the first time I ever heard of it in a term of campaign. Mm-hmm. So you are very organized and very structured, mm-hmm. meaning campaign, you put numbers. So how does so I do informational interviews all the time. I reach out to people, but mm-hmm. I never thought of it as a campaign. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that? Like, did you, why did you define it as a campaign? What does that mean?
Yeah, I guess I probably at the time I did not. I think I read something yesterday that used the word campaign about something. Oh, I know what it was. I was looking at something, they were talking about a recruitment campaign. So I kind of had the word campaign in my mind. I think what I mean by that is it was an effort with a specific mm-hmm. outcome. Mm-hmm. So I went into the process thinking I want to move in this direction. Mm-hmm. And being a very structured, goal-oriented person, I thought about how am I going to do that? Now, I couldn't obsess over, I've talked to 3 people and nobody's giving me a job, or, it would have mm-hmm. driven me crazy. So I did approach it as a learning journey. So for example, I kept notes from every conversation like you're doing. I write the date, I'd write the person's name, their phone number, their email, and then I would have kind of a transcript I'd create for myself of those notes, which served me not only for following up and writing thank you notes, but also for if I saw an article that would be of interest to that person, or I connected with that person and they got a promotion or they moved jobs, I could stay in touch with that person in a meaningful way. And actually just discovered that individualization is my second highest strength. So I guess that's something that comes pretty naturally to me, is to sort of think about, okay, I know this person's interested in that, or we talked about this. But certainly having those notes in front of you makes it a lot easier to say, oh, we talked about this. And 2 or 3 or 4 years later, sometimes I still referenced information that I saw in those notes.
I love that. I mean, I'm actually going to start doing that in regards to informational interviews, is mm-hmm. take notes, because you do a great job. I can attest that you hit me in the DMs on LinkedIn with actual articles. Like, you may like this. I do. And I read it. And so it is a very good story. So, thinking about this as someone that, takes notes and then set it and forget it, do you have like during this time, this intense active time when you're doing campaigns, did you have like not say a review session, but like, all right, I had all these conversations, let me just review or sweep through my notebook real quick, or or did you just organically pick up the book and say, you know what, I flipped to this page, I didn't talk to this person in a while, let me reach out to this person?
I see. Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying, okay, so you gather all this data, you have this transcript, then what do you do with it? How do you know who to follow up with? Or
yes, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that is, I find, a huge challenge for people who network at any stage in their careers. They're like, okay, great, I connected with the person on LinkedIn, we had a nice interchange, what do I do now? There are definitely different ways to approach it, right? You could get a customer relationship management software, that will ping you and things like that. I do it a little bit more just by my judgment. Again, because I don't have a specific goal. I'm not looking to actively grow my business. My business is completely through referral. So I'm not out there trying to generate leads and, things like that. It's just based on more sort of intuition, or also if I see something, because I read constantly, if I see something in the journal or in the Harvard Business Review or whatever, that makes me, yesterday I sent an article to a professional colleague of mine who had given a TED Talk, and her son actually had given a TED Talk on fake news. And I saw an article in the Wall Street Journal about fake news, and she's actually in Switzerland, where she's been for many years. And I just sent it over and said, hey, this made me think of you and your son. And she wrote back, she's like, he was really touched that you remembered. And, that sort of rekindled our exchange. So, you don't have to do it all just by that kind of judgment. But again, if you have notes in your notes about, this is a person I should follow up with on this date, or highlight, like, he's really interested in X, or she's really interested in Y. I've listened to your podcast with your dad, and I know, that you're the third, and I know your father's background and all those good things. So maybe if I saw articles about intergenerational, relationships or things like that, it would make me think, I wouldn't automatically send it just because we're all swamped with things, but at least make me think, this might be something that Phil would be interested in. Hey, it's actually about people in the South, or it's about people who've helped to integrate, right? Well, I remember that's of interest to him from the conversation. So I do kind of a double sort before I just ship stuff out, because that's part of the first impression, right? If you start doing too many things and people feel like, well, hello, you don't have to send me every article, then you're sort of ruining that first impression.
I love that. And I was thinking about that. Like, I am a consumer of listening and podcasts, and I do that too. That first instinct when I'm listening to the story, I'm like, who would this also benefit or also enjoy this? And then I do shoot off that, but now I'm slowing down to say, when I shoot this off to that person, like, are they in a space that need that, or would they actually read it and stuff? And then I do, and they're like, yeah, thank you for dropping that. But I'm not spamming my friends.
Right.
Because, you don't want to spam people, but you want to be thoughtful. So I love that idea. Right. So going back to first impressions, you are one of the most thorough first impression email person I've ever met. And maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. So where did the concept of like really just making a strong first impression, when did that concept for you as someone that this is something I really want to hone in on and I want to execute very well, because like I said, I believe you do execute this very well. So how did you think, like, this is something I want to craft as a technique for me to be good at first impressions?
Sure. I can't honestly say that I woke up one day and said, this is what I want to do. However, what I will say is I did get very interested in marketing when I was back in, selling pagers and actually the first voicemail to date myself. And then when I went to business school, I actually was fortunate to take 7 marketing and advertising classes. So I just took a disproportionate amount. And it really, really infused in me the importance of branding and branding beyond products and services. But really, this whole notion of personal branding that was kind of just beginning and has evolved since then. And I do think a lot about what I want to be associated with in terms of my brand, as I think everyone should, whether they are actively marketing, selling, building their relationship, or whatever. Everything we do, everything we say, everything we touch contributes to our brand. And like it or not, especially with social media, that can be conveyed across the world in an instant. So I do take care to think about, is this supporting the message I want to put out into the world? Is this how I want to be seen? And if there's something that's not working, and again, I do this with the people that I coach as well, I do stop and think, what's going on here? Is this something I could change? Taking active ownership for how I am communicating my brand. Like, for example, let's say I was really exhausted for a week and I felt like I looked terrible when I met with people. Maybe that weekend you kind of have to sit down and go, what's going on here? I've been staying up too late. I really have to put myself on a disciplined schedule, so I go to bed earlier. So I feel like I'm fresher and I'm putting out the right face. And I keep thinking about Zelensky with all that's going on. Like, how is he getting any sleep? And he's trying so hard, right, to be a man of the people. And at the same time, that's got to be tough because he can't even fulfill his basic needs. So that's a side note, but it's something that impassions me.
So I was thinking about this too, like in regards to your branding and introductions, the thoroughness that you did in regards to when you connect others. And now that I'm thinking about it, is because you want to make sure that as you do this introduction, making one a good first impression for those that you're connecting, but also you understand that those that you connect are an extension of your brand, right? So you don't want to, extend someone else to your network and they misbrand you. So can we talk about like, what are some key tips when you're thinking about introducing yourself to people? What are, you already said it, audience and all that. What are some key things that you think about as you're introducing yourself to someone to really make a good first impression? What are some of the aspects that you think of?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think before you know that you're going to meet someone, there's an important component. And then there's the actual actions that are involved in meeting the person. And then there's a little bit of what comes afterwards that I would say is still part of that first impression. And I can give some general suggestions. It obviously they have to be filtered by whether we're talking about a live introduction, a virtual introduction, an introduction through email, because some of these things don't apply in certain situations. For example, if you're on the phone with someone, you're not looking at what they wear. So that's my caveat, before I kind of make some suggestions. So you've heard this, everybody's heard this, right? You never get a second chance to make a first impression, right? So it is worth the preparation. It's worth kind of getting into the right mindset, even in advance. It doesn't hurt to have a goal, right? If you're going to meet someone at a networking event, I think it is important to understand, hey, this might be a potential client, or this might be someone that I want to take a study with down the road, or this might be someone that I just like to get to know because I've always thought she was amazing. So that kind of have that goal in mind is not a bad thing. You want to show up on time if it's, the kind of thing where you're meeting at a certain time, because that shows respect. Be prepared. Do some research. If there is, you find out the person's, whatever you can. I mean, with LinkedIn, it's amazing, right? So you could find out just about anything about them. And between LinkedIn and a general Google search or Facebook or whatever, there's not a whole lot you're not going to be able to find out. So what is that person interested in? Where did they come from? What school did they go to? How long have they been working? What has been their trajectory? Have they been in the same field all the time? Have they switched? Because that's a great opportunity for conversation. Say, oh, I noticed you spent 10 years in nursing and then you suddenly moved to administration. Tell me, a little bit about that or whatever. In the course of the conversation, you want to be flexible and not high maintenance when you're making the arrangements to talk with them. Make sure that you spell their name right, get their title right, the institution they're with. Somebody reached out to me recently on LinkedIn and I wrote back and I addressed him by his first name. And then after I responded and he responded to me, I was like, it's a PhD. Maybe I should have called him doctor. So, take the time to think those things through. You never know. That's the thing about LinkedIn. I tried to set up a conversation so I could get a sense of that, but you didn't want to do that. So I didn't have that data. And I think also getting the details right reflects on your personal values, as well as how you are going to be in that relationship. Let's say you might potentially work for that person someday. If you have misspelled 3 things in your initial email or your LinkedIn, connection request, what does that say about the work you're going to be doing for that organization? Are they going to trust you to do high quality work or to put your writing in front of the CEO? In terms of actions when you really are with the person, and again, some of these are more like live, some more virtual. You've probably heard the statistics that we really believe body language way more than we believe what people say, right? The classic example is, I'm not angry, right? Well, you believe, the sound and the affect more than you believe my words. 55% of our first impression supposedly comes through our voice, 38% through our body language, only 7% through the words. So not that you shouldn't focus on what you say, but just be conscious that all of the sort of meta communication is more important. Make sure you listen to the person. Give them your full attention. I mean, it sounds so simple, but that is really rare. I was just reading a quote, today about Ernest Hemingway saying people rarely listen. And when he said, I learned a lot, by really listening carefully. Ask how much time the person has available. Even if they told you beforehand, hey, we'll talk for 15 minutes, ask them again, when you show up.
These are good
It
tips.
may turn out that they only have 5, or it may turn out that somebody canceled and you have an hour. And that helps you to gauge how you're going to use that time, how quickly you're going to get to the punchline, or that sort of thing, warm up to the relationship. I think it's important to be enthusiastic and show interest. Some people are very dry by nature, but it's a skill that can be cultivated. Again, we have this challenge sometimes with our students who grow up in a culture where it's very important to be calm and not to show that musicality in your voice. But people like it when you're awake, alert, human, that whole thing. I would say also it's important to be, as much as it's important to be structured and organized and planful, you need to be spontaneous to a certain extent and be flexible. So if you're talking to someone and I don't know, someone comes into their office and talks to them for 5 minutes and you're like, looking at your watch, and they come back and they apologize, it's not going to build the relationship to say, yeah, okay, well, my time's valuable too, or something like that. But if you can make a joke out of it, if you can laugh and say, hey, that happens to me all the time, or God, that's me sometimes, or whatever, right? To humanize the experience, I think is helpful in building the relationship. You want to show sensitivity. Sometimes you get on a call with someone and they look like they've been crying, or they look like they're ecstatic, to kind of take that moment to connect personally first, to kind of clue into what's going on. Because if they are really sad, for example, or depressed or whatever, they're not going to be able to engage in the conversation in a meaningful way anyway. I think a lot about this quote from Theodore Roosevelt, our 26th president. He said, I don't care how much you know until I know how much you care. So people really want to know how much you care first. They can really trust that you're on their side, and then they're much more open to listening to your message. As something that I know is near and dear to your heart, you want to always project a positive attitude. People who go into the conversation and say, oh, it's raining again today. That's not really going to build a relationship. And if you're meeting in person, dress professionally or at least appropriate to the situation that you're in. And I say follow through, manage expectations as promised. I spoke with someone the other day who said, oh yeah, let's just catch up for a few minutes. I want to thank you for everything you did for me. It was literally an hour and a half later that I had to say, I'm sorry, I'm getting a call in 10 minutes. And I was just like, wow, I felt very disrespected. I mean, I know the person wasn't dissing me in particular, but it showed a lack of understanding, awareness, consideration. I thought, oh, the student's going to have a hard time, down the road. So those are the pre-things and the actual in the moment things. And then I would say afterwards, it is important to reinforce what you did to make that first impression. The way advertising works is through reinforcement. You don't just hear the brand name once and then you're off and buying it, right? You hear it over and over and over. And so you want those repeated exposures, like we've already been talking about, to add value. Now, you don't want to become an automaton and send an article like every, first of the month, every 2 months, or whatever. Yeah. But look for those connection points, those moments where you can really connect with people. And also, I think this is really important, is do some sort of connection while the conversation is still fresh. So within 48 hours of meeting someone, connecting on LinkedIn, whatever it is, send some sort of reach out to kind of reinforce that it's, again, you're not just sending a LinkedIn connection. I just listened to a webinar today with 4 people, 2 of whom I'm already connected to. I'm going to reach out to the other 2. It was about career services, but I'm going to do it in the next couple of days. And I took notes about what each person said. So I'm going to be able to kind of capture something that they said that really resonated, that seemed valuable. Let them know I'm not just sending out a bunch of invitations, but I'm also not going to wait till next week, because it's not going to be as fresh in anybody's mind. You always want to show, again, that you're concerned about the person and not the agenda in that follow-up process, and find various ways to maintain interest, and again, to really make the relationship primary. The other day I was speaking to a former supervisor and wanted his help with something, and it turned out he had a tooth issue. He had like a nerve and a tooth issue, and he was and I could tell he wasn't gonna be able to help me with the thing I wanted. So again, it was a part of me that probably felt like, hey, this is frustrating. I'm not gonna get what I want. But instead it completely shifted to focusing on him and his tooth and his health and his doctor. And then he actually followed up with me the following week, and he said, okay, that's resolved. But I was really glad that I didn't push, my own agenda and that I let him know I really care about you and your health. And I had said, that's the most important thing. Always thinking about how you can add value in the future of the relationship too. Look down the sort of the horizon, and again, getting outside of that box of the value being they're going to get me a job, they're going to give me this, they're going to give me that, but to their sort of whole world, adding value to them holistically. And it's so interesting. I'll just close with this last point that I noticed on LinkedIn recently that they've added a feature that it's like after you connect with someone, because so many people just connect and then that's the end of it. There's actually a feature that says, okay, you've connected now, reach out to the person.
Yeah.
As if somebody needs, a little bit of a nudge, which is kind of interesting, because we all forget, I think we forget 70% of what we learned by the next day.
Okay.
Like it's really important to kind of stay there, stay front and center, but to do it creatively. Not to sort of just reinforce, it was good to talk to you yesterday, have a nice life, but to be able to say, I was really thinking about something you mentioned on that podcast. And I've been thinking about this in a similar way, or, I know about this publication that is related to that. Would you like me to send you the link? Just showing that you're like investing some energy in the person goes a long way. So long answer, but I hope that's helpful.
No, that was actually, I was taking notes, man. I think you just did like a master class on networking. Seriously. I legit did that like 20, like I took notes. You dropped mad gems. That's why I said I need to get you on the podcast.
Thank you.
The only thing though that I was thinking about, I was like, that's a lot of work. Like, I feel like it's a job just to do all that you just did. So do you allocate time to like do all this? Like, Fridays at 5, I'm doing all this sweeping of my network or looking at my notes, because this legit is structured. It's organized.
Right.
It is spontaneous with the sending articles when you think of it, but just some of this stuff is like, this is real effort. So it's effort. It's real effort. It's like you have cultivated a network in a sense that you're investing in it, like social capital wise, like you're putting time and effort and not just doing it. So do you set time aside to do all these techniques? A lot of these techniques in it.
Yeah, it's a question that comes up, particularly with individuals who are starting to like switch careers, pivot careers, something like that, or just starting in the workforce. I don't do it in a disciplined way. I think for me, it's become just sort of a matter of course, which I'm very fortunate about, and I absolutely love writing in particular. I enjoy talking to people too, but most communications these days, at least follow-up communications, are primarily written. So it comes very easily to me and I enjoy it. I think it's a great idea, as you're suggesting, to set aside time periodically, whether it's every 3 months or every 6 months. And it's like anything else. If you're not really into it, it's not going to happen. It's going to feel like drudgery. Like you said, it's going to feel like work. So I sort of tell people I play mind games with myself a lot. I like to create a payoff. And I don't mean a payoff like I'm going to get a job or anything like going to give me something. But the payoff is write it down on your spreadsheet or put a little happy face next to it, or write yourself a little note when you're finished that, oh, he said such and such, or he showed me his new puppy, or he had a baby, and whatever it is that works for you, to motivate you. I think you have to find something that's going to help you not only do it, like diet and exercise, but get pleasure out of it so that you can go into it with a smile. Like when I send someone an article, this probably sounds crazy, I actually feel like the same endorphins that I do when I work out or when I eat chocolate or something.
That's not crazy. No, I feel that too. No, it's connectedness. And I think more so honestly, it's not the sending off. I'm waiting for that responsive feeling back. Like when I send something and someone say, yo, that was dope. Thank you. That's it. That's what I was looking for. Like I was looking for a reach out to connect to someone, even in an instant of one line that someone received that.
Yes.
So that's not crazy at all. Like that's what I mean. I want to definitely not spam people. I want to do like little mini connections to people to get that little bit of, I guess, dopamine or whatever. Like that little, it's a happy feeling to get it back. And so I'm chasing it, and not in a bad way. I am chasing it in a little way, like my little mini payoffs. So I like that. So that is my little mini payoffs. I vibe with that a lot. I vibe with that a lot. So you're not alone in that sense. So when you
That's good
send
to
out
hear.
something, you're hoping to get something back. I think the only part I get kind of, bummed out is if I send something well crafted and then, no one ever, they ghost me or something.
So what I tell, actually, is I coach my older son a lot, and we talk about this, and I said, you just have to focus on doing the right things, and the results will take care of themselves. You may not hear back right away. You may not hear after the second or the third communication, but you are building your brand. I've had people come back to me years later and say, I've really been waiting for the right opportunity for you to be my executive coach or my leadership coach or my career coach. And that kind of thing just gives you chills, because you feel like, okay, you know what? All of those conversations, all of those steps, all those things I wrote made an impression. So I guess I'm fortunate in that I can take the long view, and I don't expect that, because you're right. I mean, a lot of times you don't get that short-term payoff. So that's why, say to my son, I'll say to my students, you just keep doing, or as one of my former supervisors said, just keep being Amy-Louise, and they're going to do what they do. You don't have any control over the outcome, or, not more than you can by doing the right things. Universe will have to take care of the rest.
I love it. And I was about to say, do you think there's a lost art, as we get into this microwave? You just basically, you led into my next question about Longview. You think that, text messaging and the immediacy of the immediacy of instant messaging and all that, do you think that it's changed the perception of, patience with first impressions? And like now you're making, back in, make a first impression. You could call someone and they won't respond to a week. You're like, okay, but now we have this immediacy. Like, I hit that person, I connected with them. They didn't, So do you think that that some of the immediacy and has changed that first impression, mindset? The technology and all the different modes.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm letting your question sink in. So I think it's paradoxical in some ways, as you're alluding to, right? You can connect a lot faster than we could have, when all this stuff was going on. And so there's that thrill of, wow, well, she responded to me on Tinder, or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But ultimately, again, it's there's different levels of connection. So to your point, I would argue that some of the things that take longer are actually more valuable kinds of connection. I agree with you. Phone calls, right? The old, fashioned art of just picking up the phone and connecting on a human level without writing anything. You hear the person's not only words, but their affect. Are they exhausted? Are they elated? Whatever. When I was working in selling the pagers and voicemail, I wrote my very first workshop, which was called "Let the Phone Be Your Friend," because I was calling people on the phone to try to get sales, and it was really fun. And I think that to a certain extent, even though we're not doing phone sales primarily now, again, it's a way of communicating who we are and our brand and our caring for other people. So yes, phone calls are great. I would say even sending letters. I send my 94-and-a-half-year-old mother-in-law a letter every weekend. I call her every weekend. She appreciates it. Now, granted, that was more from her era, but some people still send birthday cards. There are cards that say thinking of you. Those are all ways to show I value you as a person. And ultimately, that's what the connection is going to be based on if it lasts more than just that short term. People really have to feel that you value them and you're interested in them as an individual. I think business cards are great. I know a lot of that's probably going away because we're not meeting people face to face as much anymore. But look at how the Asians treat them. It's something special. It's very important. You hold it in your hand. You look at it. It's something that is very concrete that represents your brand, even if it's not a professional or commercial brand. It's who you are, which is why I encourage even students who are going to be going to networking events to create some sort of card. That can be incredibly valuable. It could sit on someone's desk for months or years. I know a story like that where someone eventually, they looked at it enough and they called the person, to do business with them. Even the fax machine, it seems kind of outdated, but I worked for someone years ago who was out all morning and we didn't know where he was as an executive. And suddenly through the fax machine, we got a footprint of his baby who had just been born's footprint. And it was like his way of communicating without words, very, very powerful. So I'm not advocating we go back to the fax, but all of these are ways to show authenticity, sincerity, they take more time, right? So it's the opposite, right? The fact that you have to take more time is almost a sign that you care more. Just like food, right? We talked about fast food, and then people taking the time to make a whole meal for Thanksgiving or another holiday. It's almost like I'm not saying it's necessarily correlated, but the amount of time that you take sort of reflects, how much you care and, about the outcome. I think of the quote about Maya Angelou, right? People will forget what you say, they may forget what you've done, but they're never going to forget how you made them feel. Right? So it's that experience. And I love Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, his comment about, we're all on our own journey. You never know what's going on for someone. So show kindness, always. So those are like the fundamental things I think that underpin all of our communication. And we don't want to let go of those. We definitely don't want to let go of those. You could even send a small gift or a token. I gave someone an hour of free coaching a few years ago over the phone who I hadn't talked to in years. And a few days later, she sent me an Amazon gift card, as a thank you. So something little like that. It actually would have been more if she'd actually handwritten a thank you note, but I know not everybody has time to do that. She's a recruiting professional, a major company. But basically sort of doing the same kinds of things that LinkedIn does for us now, right? Birthdays, promotions, celebrating anniversaries. You hear about someone going away for a long time, job changes, acknowledging human milestones. That's really fundamental. And I don't know if you consider these old school or not, but meeting for coffee, right? Meeting for a drink, meeting at an event or a conference. I met somebody that is a connection of mine now at a Melinda Gates interview, right? So, we sort of met in a professional context. We were standing in line outside for an hour. I have another friend who was very nervous during the pandemic. We met at a grocery store to do shopping together, So, and of course, there's things like going to the gym, meeting people there, through sports, church, synagogue, volunteer work. So there's no end to it. But I think you made a great point, which is, we get so used to that quick turnaround, you connect, you text and all that. And there's a place for that, but I don't think it's at the beginning of the relationship.
I love that. It's not, there's a place for it, but not at the beginning. I love that. Yeah. So, I mean, we could go on and on, but, I don't want to give you all your secrets away. I was, man, you're dropping all these gems and you're coaching people. I don't want to give you all your secrets away. So we're going to go right into my next segment, which is shot for shot. You get to ask a random question. I ask a random question. You go first. I go first.
Okay. I guess I'd like to know, of all the podcasts, I don't know if this will prompt any memories, of all the podcasts you've done, what was the most fascinating thing that you ever learned from someone you interviewed?
Fascinating. Sheesh, that's hard. Fascinating. I don't know. I'm gonna do a quick out. I'm gonna do a quick out one that's not like fascinating, but it was for me, honestly. And within the past 2 years or so, or actually since the podcast, I think the one I did with my father was probably the most impactful episode I've recorded. And that's not just gassing. No, I'm saying that's really legit for me. This is like, I very rarely listen to my own podcast again. I don't like the sound of my voice. Even when I edit, I'm like, cringe. But that one, I actually listened start to finish with my dad over again. And I think what was fascinating about it was that I don't know. It was another, just more and more examples as I become an adult that I've taken my father off a pedestal and humanized him more. Now, is he still amazing and did great things? Yes. But like now I see him as a person that like was scared of failure or sad or cried. That was the first time he told me he cried at college. So I found that super fascinating. Yes. I was like, wow. It's like, I mean, honestly, the fascinating part too was that my dad's opening up on a public platform like a podcast instead of me, saying like, dang, you spelling all this on a podcast, to an audience of new people, so.
I thought that was an amazing segment too. I'm pleased to have had the opportunity to hear what you're talking about.
Yeah. So that was it. That was probably one of my most fascinating, impactful episodes for a while. I don't know. I mean, I can get one with like the best guru in the world, like, you hooked me up with, Jennifer Brown and all these life. But for me as an individual, hearing my father probably impacted me the most. As someone, for me as a host, was probably my most impactful episode and fascinating.
Great. Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, for you, what is one of your, when you're talking about the long term, what is one of the most long term, not most, but like most random reconnections that ever happened? Like similar to that you said that business card on the table, but for you, like I legit did not even remember this person existed, and now we reconnected because of some randomness in life.
Wow. Yeah. So there are definitely a lot of those. I'd have to think about it because I like you, I know thousands and thousands of people, fortunately. The one that comes to mind is not a professional situation,
Yeah.
but when I went to study abroad at the University of Bordeaux, and I was in the line at the cafeteria to get food, and there was some major political issue going on at the time, and I heard somebody, a few people back from me, maybe 10 people back, speaking in English about the situation. And I turned around and she looked familiar. The long story short, she and I were both best friends separately with a common young woman who actually is still living in France. She started a yoga business there. And we'd been best friends since junior high. So I hadn't seen her in years, and she and I had not been directly friends. But anyway, so that year we became very close. We only spoke French together. We traveled to Greece for 2 weeks together, all that. So if I hadn't overheard her, speaking English in the cafeteria when we were in France, we wouldn't have been able to rekindle that relationship. So that was very random and very nice.
I love that. I mean, it's also that one of those situations too, like you're in a different part of the world. You didn't really expect to see someone. I love those kind of stories. Like,
it is dope. So random. You're right. Those are wild.
So this is the part of the show where it's called shout outs and plugs. So this is your opportunity. Share whatever you want to share, show love to whoever you want to show love to, and then plugs any way that the listeners can follow up with you.
Sure. So I would actually like to shout out to two of my former mentors and supervisors. I don't know if they will ever hear this, but John Waltz, who was my very first boss when I was selling pagers and voicemail, who really embodied professionalism to me at that point in my career when I was buying IBM, blue suits for IBM at $99 and going out on the streets of Tucson when it was 80 degrees. Learned a lot from him. And also my mentor and leader when I was in executive search, Will Pliva, who taught me so much about being transparent. He used to say, I take my hits on the front end, which I think about constantly, use constantly, coach other people on constantly. I think it's just sort of the right way ethically to support other people and to treat other people. So those would be the two people that I would really want to shout out to. In terms of plugs, I would say if you need support or help in making a first impression, you're not alone. Many people are anxious in creating first impressions in a variety of different scenarios. And the good news is there is help available. So, there's certainly individuals like myself who coach where you can practice and get feedback so that, like any other muscle that we use, it gets stronger and stronger every time that we use it. So that's definitely something a service that I'd like to plug. Not so much about me specifically, but the fact that there is help available for creating those positive impressions.
Well, thank you so much. That was great. As I said earlier, I took lots of notes, and I definitely loved your time and your preparation. And, honestly, I've always looked for opportunities to learn from other people. And this is not just, me, capping, as the young people say. I really did learn techniques about how I want to present myself professionally to people the first time, but also to be as thoughtful as you are with connections. I mean, as I said earlier, you do a great job of sending things that are applicable to people. I guess that's individualization. And those are things that I'm going to try to really ingrain in myself when I'm building these relationships, because I'm really good at making new friendships. Mm-hmm. How do I maintain those thoughtfully? And I think you do a great job doing that. So I learned some things from you, and I'm definitely going to try to implement some of those strategies that you just shared on the podcast today. So for listeners, please follow up with Amy-Louise on LinkedIn. She knows what she's talking about. She has a great network. She's amazing. Please, follow and like and subscribe this podcast. Share this episode with your family members and friends. Sharing positivity is a movement. If you have any voicemails or thoughts for the podcast, you can call 571-336-6560. That's 571-336-6560. Sometimes I embed those voicemails in the podcast. So sometimes, just leave a nice note. I'll throw it on there. You'll be on a podcast. So thank you so much. Sharing positivity is a movement, and we're out. Thank you for listening to Positive Filter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity a Movement. Thanks for listening.